This is Mika Pikazo, an extremely talented Japanese illustrator who uses her unique art style to create pieces of art. Today we're diving into her style, breaking it down into its individual aspects, so you can learn how to paint girls like Mika Pikazo and incorporate some aspects of her art into your own work. Then I'll show off 2 of my own pieces that I made mimicking her style as an art study. For this video, I will be using the art program Clip Studio Paint, the program Mika Pikazo uses, and I will simply be using the G Pen, the default brush in Clip Studio Paint. First, let's talk about colors. Mika Pikazo often uses bright and saturated colors, and her color palettes lean heavily on triadic harmonies, free colors spaced evenly across the color wheel. She doesn't often follow strict rules. For example, instead of sticking to the classic red, yellow, blue triad, she might swap one color out. She often makes skin colors bland and simple as it helps balance out with all the other bright colors. One trick you could try is picking one dominant color for the piece and letting the others complement it in smaller accents. Another aspect of her style is the way she uses halftones. Halftones are used in her digital artwork to add texture and detail. If you want to emulate this, you can make halftones by drawing with either an airbrush or a G Pen on a layer, going to the Layer Properties tab, selecting halftones, and after this, you fiddle around until you get only the black dots. You can get an additional layer above your halftones, set it to clip onto your halftones, color it, and then merge it down onto your halftone layer. Halftones are often used in her works to shade fabrics and to provide patterns on materials. Additionally, they're also often used in the background of her art. Now let's discuss composition. One of the things that makes her pieces so engaging is the way she balances chaos and clarity. Her backgrounds are packed with tons of tiny details, yet amidst all this visual noise, she leaves certain areas like the character's face clean and simple. This creates a natural focal point for the viewer's eye, and it's a bit like a reverse contrast. Instead of making the focal point the most detailed part, she simplifies it to make it stand out against all the other busy aspects. Line art is another defining feature. Mika Pikazo uses thin lines for most of her work, but isn't afraid to emphasize certain areas by thickening the line weight. She also erases parts of her line to create a sketchy, dynamic feel. You can replicate this by varying your line thickness and erasing bits to add visual interest. In some areas, she abandons traditional black lines, opting for colored lines that blend with the rest of the piece. To do this, you can use colors from your palette and turn down their saturation. When it comes to shading, Mika Pikazo keeps it simple but effective. She starts with her base color layer, then adds shadows by saturating the color. Finally, she draws a line connecting the border between the shadow and the well-lit part of the skin. Mika Pikazo draws eyes very uniquely. To recreate this, start by drawing the basic shape of the top and bottom eyelid. Connect your top eyelid to your tear duct. Color in these lines with black and color your eyelid whenever it connects to the skin or when it's touching the eye. Outline all your colors on your eye with black or dark pink colors. Create your sclera in your iris. Make a small circle of your secondary color at the bottom of your iris. Add a pupil by making a small circle in the very center of the iris and make a smaller circle within that with a lighter shade of black. Take the main color of your iris and make it darker. Draw 2 rough rings around the pupil. Change this color to be a dark version of your secondary color when you're coloring over it. Make one of the rings thicker at the top. Outline your iris with different darker colors. Now add white dots inside your pupil and on your colored part of the eye. Add a bunch of dots all around your iris to represent reflected light. Try to use colored features in other parts of the iris or the drawing. With all these elements combined, you'll start to see how Mika Pikazo creates her stunning illustrations. Her work is excellent at balancing bold colors, intricate details, and excellent composition. The best way to learn, though, is by practice. Try studying her art, deconstructing it layer by layer, and applying these techniques to your own work. Now on to my art study. For my art study, I decided to create 2 pieces, one of an already existing character and one of an original character so I can do more experimentation. My main inspiration pieces and references for these drawings were the images in Mika Pikazo's Disney collection, as I found those to be quite complex, yet they have simple backgrounds. For my first piece, I drew Mavuika from Genshin Impact. In this drawing, I decided to use teal to contrast the red, orange, and yellows of the hair. I drew my eyes in a very traditional Mika Pikazo way, and one thing I learned is that in a lot of Mika Pikazo's works, values are very important. Because there are so many saturated colors, it's important to make sure your image is clear and readable. For this piece, I was very careful in checking values often, as all the dark shades of gray in the clothes could cause issues with values of readability. When coloring the skin, I did the way Picasso does it, with the saturated shadow and a saturated line connecting both parts of the skin. I then colored the hair quite simply, as I didn't want to fully implement the way she shades hair because I thought it would be too difficult for me to incorporate all these new aspects of art at once into my drawing, and I was worried how it would look with the multicolored hair. I used a lot of halftones and shading to create visual elements, and I decided to make most of my halftones teal as to make the drawing blend in better with the background. For study 2, I wanted to go all in with Pikazo techniques. I decided to make the palette for this drawing insanely vibrant. I used reds, pinks, and navy blue. Additionally, I had a bit of dark gray and some shades of purple. Because this is an OC, I was able to basically do whatever I wanted with this piece, making the process much easier than if I was referencing something that already existed. I spent a lot of time deciding what part of the drawing would be colored with what, as to ensure the values were top-notch. I also wanted to do the glasses in a more typical Mika Pikazo style for the use of halftones. I added a ton of band-aids on the legs as to keep the piece visually appealing. I rendered the lighting on the clothes to simply be a soft light version of the background color. For the hair, as it was mostly one color, I was able to implement some of the techniques, and added a ton of little details. First, I added my typical gradient and light. Then I added some sporadic highlights to my drawing to give it more color. I pulled off this strange undercoat under the hair, which I think is meant to represent shine, by using a random hairbrush, drawing some lines, turning down the opacity, and adding an outline and clipping it onto the hair. Finally, I added the final shine at the top of the head. I also added some individual strands that were colored in different colors that were in the piece to make it look more interesting. Overall, I think my second drawing is a much greater improvement than my first. It implements a lot of elements of the Mika Pikazo art style quite decently. I had a lot of fun doing this study and feel that it allowed me to learn a lot. And that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.